Hi, guys. Thank you. So, I'm Maggie Malek. I'm the CEO of MMI. Like he said, we are a modern brand lab where performance meets possibility. I'm going to scoot this chair up. I also have to say, I'm a little bit of a unique cheater moderator because I have the honor and the privilege of working and mentoring and being friends with all three of these amazing ladies up here on stage. So, I know their work, I know how they show up at the office, and they have some really great advice today. So with that, we're going to kind of get started. So for the first time in the Fortune 500 list, 68-year history, more than 10% of Fortune 500 companies are led by women. That's awesome, but it also means we have still so much work to do. The gender pay gap remains stable, and women continue to see challenges in the workplace. So each of these women has a unique perspective. So I'm going to start with kind of a loaded question. So it is obviously Women's Month. We just had International Women's Day. And we know a lot of brands miss the mark on opportunities like these. So I'm going to start with you, Kelly. Do you think that we should be, all brands should be talking about International Women's Day and Women's History Month? How should we approach that?
Hold on a minute. Oh, got it. Thank you. Thanks, Jen. All right, good to have the microphone. So that's kind of a layup question, right? Because I guess what I would say is no. It depends on whether the brand has a right to speak. And really what that means is, has the brand historically been present in doing something meaningful in the lives of women, right? That would enable them and allow them authentically and legitimately to show up, right? And to speak. I will share, if you don't mind. So back right after George Floyd and the terribleness of that, right? We had a lot of brands who wanted to speak, right? They wanted to say something. And the first thing we did was form a small committee, 4 people, and we were kind of a clearinghouse for brands because not every one of our brands had the right to speak. And it started with, we developed a whole template for, okay, what are you doing in the space? What does your landing page look like? Have you developed programs, right, that are helping, people of color? And what we found was some yes, some no. And the good news is, they said, all right, we now understand. So we have systematized that. And they went to work and developed programs that were super meaningful. So International Women's Day comes. All right, yeah, we've got programs like, the Olay STEM program. Was set up, is making a meaningful difference. So if you're not making a meaningful difference, then don't talk.
I think, sometimes just as individuals and passionate brand marketers or leaders in general, we have such a passion and a desire to bring our personal passions or point of views out through our brands. And it comes with discipline to say, what is the role of the brand? What is the role of the product? And can I authentically and originally show up in this moment to actually add value to the end user? Or am I just kind of projecting my own personal passions and beliefs through that brand? And so it's so easy to say, I want to act, I want to show up, but it's so important to think and pressure test, when do I show up? But also equally as important, when do I not show up? Yeah. And that in and of itself says something, I think, about the brand and the individuals leading it.
Yeah. I love that. Santhi, I'd love to hear your perspective, just given Halo Top and fun ice cream and joy. How do you approach some of these more difficult conversations?
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Companies with our influence, we have a role to play in the betterment of society, and we need to do it in an authentic and genuine manner. Authenticity is key for us, and for Halo Top, it is even more important. And I would like to give an example of how we have been able to do that in my prior life at Hershey, when I was a CMO for Hershey. And at Hershey, we were able to do and leverage our brand for the empowerment of women in a authentic manner because Hershey name itself lends well to it. So the campaign was all about elevating women to empower other women, and her for she, and her and she, the words were all in the brand name. So we were able to adapt the packaging. Her for she, we highlighted women across functions, whether it be the arts, science, sports, technology, and our campaign was all around it. We highlighted women across the world on about women, and we were able to do it in an authentic way. At the same time, to Kelly's point, we also paused communication at certain key moments. When the Ukrainian war started, we put a pause on all communication regarding this topic to be sensitive to the challenges that women had during that time. So it is balancing that authentic message in a contextual manner and communicating in an authentic way.
So can I just build? Because I think, Stephanie, something you said is really important, which is each one of us is like a human being, and we have our personal passions, right? And we happen to work on brands. And so when something like the war happens, or anything in society happens, we as individuals want to show up, right? And oftentimes, at least what I saw, was that we had people who just wanted to speak through the brands, right? Their personal passion through the brands. And what it requires of us as leaders is to have everybody take a big step back, really take a look at the fiber of the brand, and acknowledge personal passion. Sometimes those things intersect, sometimes they don't, but it takes a certain level of objectivity in all of us, in us especially as leaders, and especially with young people who are, I'm like the oldest person on the panel here, but young people in the organization to say, hey, we get this, right? We see you, we get you, we understand, and Pantene doesn't have a right to speak on this, right? So I think it's that, it requires something extra of us as leaders.
I think one of the interesting things, just to think about that a little bit, and we've talked about this a ton. So as CEO of MMI, which is a Texas-based agency, obviously there's a lot going on in the state of Texas, surprise, with women's rights. And I've been super vocal about that on my own platform. How do you encourage and separate that with women in your companies, encouraging them to have their own voice, but also reminding them that maybe the brand doesn't need to necessarily talk about that? So Kelly, since you kind of just answered last, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, it's honest conversation, right? It's honest conversation to say, hey, you know what? This is a space where it's okay for you to step in and step up in your own personal channel, right? And it's adult conversation, right? And I think for the most part, when you address it, it's when you don't address it that people get kind of suspicious and of the company and what is the company doing and why isn't the company speaking up. It really requires us as leaders to have honest conversation with our team members and our peers, an open conversation and transparent conversation.
I love that. So one of the next questions that we all wanted to talk about is in the vein of open conversation. So gender pay gap, it's still a huge deal. There are not enough women in senior leadership. So, I want to talk a little bit about specific steps that you are all taking to ensure that there's a more pipeline of gender diversity in your organization. So, Stephanie, I love how you've built out your team. So can we talk a little bit about what you're doing at Nature Sunshine?
Sure, yeah. So I joined Nature Sunshine about 2 years ago, health and wellness space. And talk more into the microphone.
Yes.
Got it. Okay, thank you guys. So I've been at Nature Sunshine for about 2 years, and when I arrived, there was absolutely no marketing department. And so I got to take the team from 0 to essentially 12 to 14 individuals that are all digital marketing savvy individuals and amazing, amazing individuals and humans. And it was really important to me to make sure that we built out a very diverse team, because actually a majority of the Nature Sunshine workforce, a lot of them are male. And so I thought, hey, if this is an opportunity to really have a fingerprint on the organization, it's my duty to ensure that we're bringing gender diversity as well as diversity and thought leadership to the table. So we've gotten to build that whole entire team out. And additionally, I think as the leader of the team, it's important to make sure that I'm enabling them to really be thoughtful about their career aspirations, their direction, and then how I can help them foster that development internally. So one individual just graduated college, social media manager, and we had a really in-depth career conversation. Do you want to be a generalist or do you want to be a specialist? And based on that, really figuring out, okay, here are the steps, here's the opportunities, and here's the exposure we're going to need to give you within the organization, right? As a generalist, you're going to need to understand operations and supply, and also interact with finance, a very male-oriented vertical in our company. And how is she going to gain those experiences and exposure and touch points, not only develop herself personally, but also then help her take steps forward? So I think it's about conversation, understanding career aspirations, and then making sure there's a very thoughtful work plan on how you, as their leader, are going to invest in them and give them the pathway to achieve that.
I love that. And Santhi, on that vein too, one of the really cool things you talked about was how you support an international diverse workforce. And so thinking about those work plans, supporting them differently. So tell us a little bit about what you've done at Wells with that, bringing in international women.
Absolutely. So to step back from a context standpoint, I'm proud that our entire executive leadership team has a goal to deliver gender diversity and inclusivity within the organization and to increase that. So towards that, I'm also equally fortunate to have been able to implement that. And, since I came into the organization, 9 months ago, we have been able to double the number of gender diversity in my leadership team.
That's amazing.
And as well as across the organization, across levels, because once people see that there is a diverse organization of the leadership team, then more people will come in. And we also have a panel, the interview panel also has to be equally diverse so that we can make sure that we attract the right talent and we assess people in the right way. And third, from an international women's standpoint, it's more, I've noticed that quite a few international women are also introverts. They don't speak up because of language barrier or just comfort level. Or, the point has been said before, why should I speak up? And this may not apply just to international women, it's women in general, or introverts in general. It's my obligation as a leader to encourage diverse perspectives within the organization, to allow the people who traditionally don't speak up and say, hey, you're quiet, what's your thought? That's one. Second, give them confidence by encouraging them. Oh, your point is spot on. Let's implement something. That gives them the encouragement to speak up more and be the first ones to speak up in the future.
Well, so that both of what y'all have talked about is amazing. So we've got more women in, we've got more international women in, so that's great. Kelly, I think one of the things that you're really passionate about is once you've got those women in the door, how do you think about things like pay transparency conversation and frameworks and all of that? So talk a little bit about that for us.
Sure. P&G started a while back to put in place a review of all employees, all things equal, experience, education, everything across the spectrum. And routinely, we will do, I say we, I retired 2 weeks ago.
Congratulations.
Right? So I can't really say we. It's still we. I guess once a P&G'er, always a P&G'er. But I am proud that this is a review that's done routinely. And I can say that I know it was done because I saw a bump in my salary about, 5 years ago. And I didn't know where it came from. I was like, what happened? So I inquired, and they said, we did a review. And, guess what? We found that you were not paid equally to your male counterpart. And so I appreciate that, right? And I know it wasn't very long. I know it was probably about a year. So I think having those routine checks in place, both at the enterprise level, and then my encouragement to everyone in this room, is to do it at your team level, just to ensure that everyone is being paid fairly and equitably. And whether we like it or not, the Gen Zs now, I mean, I have 2 kids who are Gen Zers, so, you know, I love the Gen Zers, but they'll be like, hey, I got an X%, salary increase, and now I'm making Y. How about you, right? So they're doing the comparison, even if we don't have pay transparency in place. So just good to get your house in order.
That's awesome. So Kelly is no longer at P&G, but she is a leadership coach now. So if you need a leadership coach, she has great advice.
Right here.
With that, I'm going to ask all 3 of y'all this question. So with all these amazing brand leaders in the room, obviously this is a difficult conversation, but what is one piece of advice you would give everyone to take back to their organization? What's something they can do tomorrow to address gender diversity, pay equity, and all that? So I'll start with you, and then we'll go this way.
All right, so I just gave you one, right? Tomorrow, just go in, take a look at all of your team members, taking into account, education, experience, et cetera. Make sure everybody's being paid what they need to be paid and fairly across the board. That's one. The second one is we often talk about, especially in big companies, X percentage of our management is Y. Okay? What you need to do, and you as a team leader can do, is take a look at the diversity of your teams. Because at the enterprise level, it's great. It's great that we have, when we have great percentages and great numbers, but we each come to work every day and work inside a team. So if I, as a woman, am coming to work and I'm surrounded by a bunch of dudes and I'm not seeing any other women, then that doesn't feel like diversity to me, right? So if you're in a big company and you see that happening, take control and have a plan in place to get a more diverse team around you. All right, so that would be my 2 pieces of advice.
I probably have 2 as well. First and foremost, as a leader, we are all responsible for making sure that we're taking care of, nurturing, and empowering not only the people that directly work for us, but also the peers or other like functions within the organization, or honestly anybody. So if you're in the position to really elevate somebody, lift somebody up, empower them, or give them opportunities that maybe they didn't even realize were at their fingertips, I don't know, I personally feel like it's my job because somebody did that to me. Right? Somebody gave me the stepping ground, somebody gave me the opportunity, and I feel very fortunate to have had it. And so I feel like it's my job to now pay that back. The second piece of advice would be, it's okay to celebrate you and the wins that you have within the organization. We beat ourselves up sometimes if we made a mistake or didn't do this perfectly, et cetera. But when you win, celebrate that and share that and make it a moment not only for yourself, but also for, again, other individuals on your team, other like-minded individuals, or other females.
We are all here because we are leaders in the organization. And as you said, we paid forward. And I encourage all of us to do one simple thing, which is the power of 3E, as I call it. The first E is enrich your junior members. Second, I'd say encourage your team members. And 3, I would say elevate your industry peers. And that's all of us here, right? If each one of us here is able to do these 3 things for 3 women every month, imagine the quadruple effect that you would have on an ongoing basis. There are more than 200 people here, and every month, if you do it, it's more than 2,500 women that we are impacting. And that is contagious in a positive manner.
I love that. So I think sometimes in the marketing industry, but also leaders, you want credit for the work that you did. There's a lot of celebratory things going on. Stephanie, you talked about how you work really hard to bring your younger employees into meetings so they can shadow you and watch how you approach things, which I think is so smart. How do you make them feel comfortable in those settings? How do you pass on the credit and make sure everyone knows it's not all about you, but it's about your amazing team?
Yeah, I like that one. Honestly, I try to emulate a lot of the other mentors and leaders I had. Like I mentioned, I feel very fortunate. I've had amazing female leaders, amazing male leaders, several actual male mentors that are feminists at the core. And so, I kind of try to emulate, like I said, exactly what they're doing. So first and foremost, one, I just make sure that they understand the objective and what we're trying to accomplish that day. Two, I then, especially if they're junior and they don't necessarily know how to conduct themselves in those types of forums, we war game and prep with questions and answers and really trying to understand, okay, how would you respond to this? How are you going to navigate this question when it comes up? And also, I can pre-populate some questions that I hypothesize are going to be asked so that they're mentally prepared and their nerves don't get the best of them. And then not more importantly, but I guess equally as important is just, figuring out somebody's language of appreciation. So whether it's a good job afterwards, or in front of the specific senior leader, hey, really love that idea, like Santhi mentioned. So everybody has, we all read languages of love, right? There's languages of appreciation in the workplace. And so that's one of my first questions that I ask somebody when they start, working together is, how can you be appreciated? How can I demonstrate that appreciation? And if it's verbal affirmations in front of leaders, that's what I try to do.
No one's told me a time check, so I'm just taking over and asking y'all questions that I want to know about. So I think one of the things that has been really important for me, and it's what I spoke about with all y'all, is having what I call like my female board or my hype squad. We have a group text. We call ourselves the Magic Makers. So Santhi, you mentioned like finding other women that can support you. How do you go about that? And do you guys each have your own kind of individual board, if you will, of people that you go to for advice?
Absolutely. And this board, fortunately for me, has been both male and female. And there have been peers from my past experiences. There have been my bosses, my cross-functional partners, my friends, colleagues, my relatives, right? Family members. Surprisingly, I've learned a lot from my father, my mother, and also from my Gen Z daughter. It's interesting how asking a question can give you insights that you would never have thought. But going about that is continuing to maintain that relationship with people you have touched up, right? When you make an impact and help others, they will be able to help you. Building that trust over time is important. It's not just reaching out to somebody, hey, come on, be on my advisory board. It is about building that trust and relationship where they get to know you, you get to know them, and then you have that handful of maybe a dozen people that you can always count on, and they will always remember you as that for your unique qualities that you bring and the value that you bring.
Oh, I love that so much. So Kelly, we've all mentioned younger people now. So Kelly, how do you think about making sure that you're also learning and reverse mentoring from that next generation as you're bringing them in?
Yeah, thank you. And I was just going to build, yes, and I learn more from my direct reports, my former direct reports. I have no direct reports now. And it's interesting because I'll enter into a mentoring discussion, like they will see it as a mentoring discussion, but I've got my learning hat on, and I learn more from them sometimes, I think, than they learn from me. And so I try not to be the advice giver all the time, but rather the listener to learn and to be curious about, especially millennials and Gen Z. They're growing up in such a different world than what I grew up in, and so I can learn from them what's needed and how I can support them, and rightly how they can support me, right? To create sort of a flywheel or a virtuous circle. And it's been really amazing. And now to think about like going into sort of all I'll do is coach is even, what a gift.
All right, I officially got the 5-minute warning, so I'm going to close with one final question. So obviously this is a conversation that we've had a lot over the past several years, and it's an important one, but it's one we all have to keep pushing in. What is one thing that you are so hopeful about for the future of gender equality? So I'll start with Santhi and we'll go down.
I mentioned this earlier. I'm so hopeful because of two things. One, we are all talking about this today, and there are a lot of topics that's happening. So that itself is the beginning. And the second that I'm excited about is when I see the younger generation being empowered, heading down new territories and uncharted areas in a bold, courageous manner, and that gives me confidence and hopeful for the future of women.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that gives me hope and confidence is, as I mentioned earlier, there's more male and female feminists that are continuing to emerge, and not only emerging and believing it at their core, but feeling free to stand up and share those points of view and perspective. And additionally, the fact that, again, we're having this conversation here today, and then I feel almost, and maybe this is the wrong thing to say, but I feel personally empowered, and like I'm in the actual position that I'm in, that I can actually help make an impact. Like my current team is now 60-40 female, when before the team didn't exist, and it's a very male-dominated industry. Like I just feel empowered to actually do something about it. And so I think that that's just really liberating and exciting. So yeah.
So yes to all of that. And look, I would say I'm encouraged because more and more women are deciding what they want and need and why they want and need it. And they're making decisions from a place of strength, right? So the flip side of that is that, and I mean, I'm not like sharing anything we don't already know, a lot of women are stepping out, right? So I'm hopeful that the women who are grounding themselves in what matters to them and really understanding that, my hope and challenge in a way is that they take a look at their companies and how they can be agents of change within the boundaries that they have established for themselves, because nobody else is going to do it, right? We're the ones who establish the boundaries for ourselves, and then we need to step into that power to influence change at the company. And if you can't, go to another company.
Amen. Yeah, I always tell the team life is too short to work at a company that you hate or that doesn't align with your values.
Yep.
Peace out.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate y'all. I know y'all, I tell you all the time, I'm obsessed with you guys. And so this was really special. So I guess we'll open it to questions now. I'm just
And we're obsessed with you,
I'm in
Maggie.
charge now.
You will just pass the mic to him. Are there any questions? Oh, look at that.
So building off of aligning with values, how do you, or examples you can share of putting that down then onto your media partners, making sure they're aligning with your values as you're trying to express your brands, your company from a human level, either through like media activation or just them as a company kind of gut checking them to make sure they align with your values and such.
Do you want to take that? Why don't you take it first?
So from a media standpoint, so we as an organization have gone on a mission to represent the diverse population. And we have to do it in an authentic manner at Wells. And one campaign that we were able to deploy in a meaningful way that resonates with the brand, but also with our target audience, is our Bomb Pop targeting tweens. And our agency partners at Stagwell were able to create was free to be you, right? So we encourage our younger generations to be themselves. And you have the freedom to be you, whether you are in sports, dance, music, or gaming, or whatever, and however you want to express yourself. And Bomb Pop is there to allow you to express yourself in a way that is meaningful to you. And so that is what the brand resonates, that's what resonates with our brand, that's what resonates with the consumer, and we are able to deliver it in an authentic manner.
I think, Kelly, you have some good thoughts because y'all have done a lot of that, Procter.
Yeah,
Gamble.
we have. We've done a ton of it. So we set standards. We set standards and we hold our agency partners, all of our partners, accountable for that. And when they don't, we don't work with them anymore. I mean, it's really, it sounds very simple, and it wasn't very simple, but I mean, we're a 200-year-old company, right? And so integrity, like all of our, we call them purpose, values, and principles, PVPs, are really clear to everybody in our organization and to all of our partners. And so, it becomes a conversation and then accountability.
Is there another?
Thank you. Hi, I'm Kimberly from Butler Till. Kelly, you mentioned one example where you were treated differently as a woman. You talked about the pay transparency and the adjusting of your salary. Can you guys offer any other examples of where or when you have felt disadvantaged being a woman?
That is such a good question. Who wants to go first?
Go for it.
Go.
I need a mic. So I sometimes feel like I have a double disadvantage because I'm also young. So I was promoted to CEO of MMI at 35, just in time for a global pandemic. And I put on my imposter syndrome shoes, I would say, for the first year in my role. And this is why I'm kind of love festing on these women a little bit. It was women like Kelly who reminded me that I was invited to the table for a reason, and my voice matters. And the reason I got promoted was because I know my numbers inside and out. I run my business like a boss. It doesn't matter if I'm a girl or boy. And that's when I started putting together that panel of my hype squad and my board. So I feel like some of it was the industry. There are a lot of men that lead agencies in this industry, so being a young woman was different. But I think that I also did it to myself at first. I feel like I disadvantaged my own self because I felt like, oh, I can't wear fun clothes anywhere. I have to wear high heels and blazers and be super serious and pencil skirts. No, you can totally be yourself, and you can find women and men that will celebrate you. Bilal's here. He also cheered me on. So that's a real example for me, and I think that I took away some of my own power because I felt like I needed to show up as a manly, dominant female. I was also in the military, so that probably had something to do with it too. But no, that was really hard. And I think transformationally finding my voice as a female and embracing my femininity and using that as a superpower has made me a different type of leader the past 2 years than I was the first year as CEO. That was really honest. So there I am.
I can give an example, and I would actually turn that around rather than a disadvantage to courage, and how I've been able to come through situations that might be seen as a disadvantage, right? So, and I had many situations. So when I was in engineering college, I was one of the 20 people out of a class of 400 girls, right? 20 girls in a class of 400 at that time. Second, when I moved from India to Indonesia, I was the only girl from a team of 12, moving to a foreign country just out of undergrad. Again, you have to figure things out in a new country, new language, new culture. Third, and every leadership team that I come to in the US, I have been the only girl, only woman, or the only international person in the room, and the opportunities were for me to connect with my peers in a way that connected with them, rather than them connecting to what I am. And that has been the evolution of my journey, and now I know how to resonate. And always, I go back to the one thing that I can connect with is family. That is common across people, and that's the one language that I use to bond and build relationships.
Well, with that, I think we've had another great panel. Can we give them some love?